Okay, Sean, well, it's great to have you back with us again. We do appreciate your time. So we had a great question from the last podcast that Lance asked, and I'll go ahead and let him take over and get into that. But it's a good one, so go for it, Lance.
Hey, Sean. So I've got a couple of diametrically opposed groups of friends and acquaintances. There's the new group that just moved out to the Redoubt, and they've broken away, and they're so excited, and they're here, and they've, against all odds, escaped the rat race, and that's awesome. All my other friends and acquaintances, the ones I grew up with that are trapped back in the cities, that hate their life, are stuck in debt, can never get out of debt, and then just keep buying more stupid stuff because they need to cover up the emptiness in their lives because they're so in debt. They want to be out here. They want to live this cool, fun, independent, freedom, liberty lifestyle, but they just can't break away, and they've given up hope.
It's an important one because it's a tough transition for a lot of people. It really is, and I know that, and I know a lot of people that are trying to make that transition as well. And what I would say is honest. I mean, I don't have any magic formula, but what really helped us is we had a vision, and you know, it was okay. This is what we want our life to look like, and it was okay. It's okay to embellish in that, and you know, I want to live on a piece of property, and I want to be able to, you know, grow a good portion of my own food, and you know, whatever that is for that person. If I want to be free, by being able to start my own business and you know, grow my own food, etc. Whatever that is, it's really important for people to frame that. I mean, really frame it and get it in there and just own that vision. Now, from there, I'm going to go into standard goal setting, and that's what's worked for us. That is why we've been able to do as much as we have and as quick as we have, is that you go into really good, you know, blocking and tackling with goal setting, and you're setting that goal setting, and you make sure those goals are nested inside of that vision. And so what that vision really is the why. It's what people will hold on to, the why of why they want to get out of the city, why they want to break away from their corporate job or whatever, and they want to obtain some level of freedom. And so if they have that strong why and they really frame it, then I think that will help. I mean, it certainly helps some people, you know, and of course it's just plain hard work. You gotta sacrifice, and you've got to plan, and you've got to set goals. All those things that I think we all know we should do but don't do are keys. They really are keys to getting it done.
Yeah. Would you recommend if somebody is able to break away that they just do it and come out here with a goal, but not necessarily things set up in such a way that they can really be self-reliant, just sort of show up and hope they can work everything out when they get here? Or do they really need to have things well planned out in advance before they show up and put their foot on the ground for the first time?
I think they need to have it well planned out. And again, that doesn't mean inaction. That's, you know, a lot of people will say, well, if I have to have it really well planned out, that means it's going to take me 10 years to do it. No, it just needs to be well thought out, well planned out. Right. Your goals need to be appropriate. You know, I'm a fan of the SMART goal concept. You know, it's got to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And if you have those and you have a good plan, then I say go for it. Okay, but you know, I've consulted with a number of people who just show up, and they've done that. You know, good on them. Hey, they're taking action, but they're woefully unprepared, and they end up buying a piece of raw land without the ability or the knowledge or the cash to develop it fully. And then they're like, oh, we got to move back to the city. I mean, the city might mean, you know, Sandpoint or something like that.
And the house is still wrapped in Tyvek.
Yeah, or the property is still sitting there, you know, with a shed on it or something like that. Okay, so yes, I mean, just fundamental planning, goal setting, all that. And honestly, that's one of the huge benefits I got from my military experience as a military officer. I did a lot of planning. Okay, so I did, so those things come naturally to me. So us putting a plan in place, and that's how I honestly, one of the best ways I help people is they like, this is what we want to do. They have a why, they have kind of a vision. I help them kind of shape that, and then I give them the steps, and that seems to help. And I know that'll help, your friends and being able to do that. If they sit down and they just work it out, you can go back to just basic goal setting. 97% of Americans don't do it. 3% do, and they're way more productive than the 97%. Bottom line.
That's great advice. Have a goal, have a plan, prepare, think it through.
Yeah.
So Sean, maybe we're segueing here, into the wrong area. I'm not sure what other questions Lance has for you, but I'm really curious from your perspective. What do you think is the number one thing that people really fail to achieve in their preparedness that they should be focusing on? I mean, what's that one thing they just forget to do? A lot of people in this area, they have tons of guns and they have tons of ammo. That's about it, right? So that's to the extent that they're preparing, is just bulking up and all of that. But what do you feel like is the major thing people are missing?
Yeah, it would depend on the individual largely, because it's hard to just kind of cookie cutter everybody in to a slot. But honestly, most people that I talk to, and I kind of make a distinction between preparedness-minded peoples and preppers, and that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that when you think about those terms, probably two different type of people come to mind. Okay, and I don't know if that makes sense, but
definitely, yep.
The prepper tends to, and again, I'm generalizing here, tends to focus on the cataclysmic end of the world zombie apocalypse scenario, and grossly underestimates their preparedness, right? So they have lots of guns and ammo. They can deal with 1,000 zombies trying to breach the perimeter.
Right.
But they're woefully unprepared. So I deal with people a lot, and they're like, yeah, we got this, we got that. I'm like, I'm just gonna say this bluntly. It's like, where are you gonna crap? I mean, seriously, where are you going? What are you doing with your waste? And they're like, huh? What? I mean, so that's just one example. I'm not saying waste is it. It's waste. It's everybody forgets waste, although they do. But that's an example of a gap that large amounts of people miss. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna dig a hole in the ground, but what's the plan? Oh, 50 people are going to descend over here, and it's like, okay, so they're all going to go to the bathroom in that hole right there. Got it.
Right.
All right, let's talk about this a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's an example. So I can't give you specifics other than to say that most people overestimate their preparedness, and in particular, I use the example of waste, but it's probably skills is the number one thing. So can you I'll just use something simple. Can you cook off grid? Okay, so the normal, I'm saying like a fireplace or charcoal. So right, if somebody says, well, I have my grill. Well, great. You have 3 bags of briquettes. Good job. That'll last for the weekend.
Right.
So it's skills. Are you cooking with a rocket stove? Are you practicing that? Are you cooking with a sun oven? Are you cooking using a battery bank? And are you doing these different things? Just some basics like that. So I probably, like I said, I think a lot of people overestimate their preparedness.
It's interesting how the modern preparedness lifestyle has upped the ante from the survivalist movement of the 70s and 80s, where what Christian described, people just sitting on a bunch of bullets and food and thinking, yeah, I've got it made, I'll survive whatever happens. And it's really at such a higher level now. It's so much more thoughts and intelligence has gone into it.
It is. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And our thing is, I don't want to be a survivalist. I'm not put here on this planet to go hide in the hills, right? I want to develop community. I want to, I want our country back. Yes, I do want our country back. But I want to have develop relationships, and I want to be resilient, and I want to help other people be resilient, and I want to do it together. And that's again one of the reasons why we moved up here, is to find like-minded people and develop community and get as many other people as resilient and like-minded as possible as well.
That's
So.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, we want to enjoy life, not just survive.
Yeah.
Right. Thrive, not survive, right?
Exactly. Yep. That's it.
I had a thought in this modern litigious society that we live in. Unfortunately, we're all trying to break away from that, but we're still kind of enslaved to it in a way. What about legal and liability issues? So, making your own food, growing your own food, selling your own food, having classes, having people on your property. It would be nice if we all just were decent and didn't do bad things to each other. But there's always that errant individual out there that can't wait to slip and twist their ankle or get sick on some food and start suing willy-nilly. So how does one prepare themselves like that if they do want to have a homestead, a setup where they're going to be selling things, even just selling eggs off of the street from their chickens?
Yeah, great question, and you're getting into the area where I love Idaho, and I really do, but into an area it's like, wait a minute, I thought this was a place of freedom, and no, I need to go get a permit to be able to do this or that.
Exactly.
Even in Idaho. But here's the important thing: we live. We're not living in a post-apocalyptic survival time. We're living in, we can debate the functionality of society and our nation, but we're functioning right now, right? And probably because everybody's a zombie and they're well entertained, so we're still functioning. That's just the truth of the matter. But we are, and so you must understand those regulations. You mentioned eggs. Fortunately, in the state of Idaho, there's little to no regulations. In fact, one of our farmstead enterprises is selling eggs, and so we do that. And we have customers, and we sell to a restaurant, etc. And we're doing that all above board, legal. I do a Schedule F for farm, and we have an S corporation for the prepared homestead, and we have an accountant and all that. And I would recommend those things, accountant and tax attorneys. And unfortunately, it's not like I like the system, but that's what I do recommend. And if you're going to be in small business, and if you're going to sell raw milk, you can do it in the state of Idaho, and that's wonderful. But there's still some hoops that you need to jump through, and so I recommend people do that. Now, am I saying that everyone should never do anything because the government says? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. And in fact, I don't want to get in too much trouble here, but I'm going to say, look, between two people, if they want to, on the side, if I'm going to trade with my neighbor something for something, I'm going to do it. Okay, and we can do that, and we've built community, and we understand that. But at the same time, you're going to do small business. I mean, you guys know this. If you're going to have a small business, you're going to have a farmstead enterprise. You know what? You got to get out there. You got to learn the rules and regs, and you got to play ball that way. Because you're right. You could have a customer who gets sick, and we need to protect our assets. So
That's right. Yep, definitely.
Along those same lines, looking towards the future, let's say that there is not a big cataclysmic event. Let's say there's not a financial collapse, but rather just the continual slide that we've all experienced in our lifetime, where things get more regulated, and there's at the local level, the federal level, and the state level. We mentioned in the previous podcast how this area, the American Redoubt, northern Idaho, is kind of like the least worst place. It's the best place out of everything else out there in the country. But if you were to compare this area versus basically any small town in in any what would be considered a liberal state like New York or California or some eastern seaboard state from 40 years ago, 50 years ago, even probably 30 years ago, were in most respects probably a lot less free than what people enjoyed in average small town America 30, 40 years ago. So in that stream of thought, it seems like we're only going to get progressively more regulated. Do you see an end to it? Are things going to finally snap back, or is it going to be just just something we deal with and we just have to keep up with all of those encroachments and regulations and whatnot?
Yeah, I think just due to human nature, yeah, we're going to become more and more regulated. There's going to be some wins here and some losses there, and but if we take a long view and we look at history, I always ask this question to a lot of people. It's like, tell me, give me a ballpark figure, just a rough guess. What's the percentage? So give me a rough percentage of nations that have lasted throughout history. And everybody thinks and they think and they think and they go, wait a minute, that's a trick question. I'm like, well, yeah, it kind of is, because the answer is 0%. And so we have this ever-growing government, and I think it's just it's a cycle. I mean, if you can go on the forums and the online in Facebook and even here in northern Idaho, you have people clamoring for more government, clamoring for the government to step in and make these people stop doing that, or make these people start doing this.
Right.
And it's just like, what are you people doing? You have no idea what you're doing, because on the same time, as soon as the government comes around and goes after something that you like, you're not going to like that.
Right. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how our governmental structure is supposed to work,
Yes.
Look up the definition, right? It's very different from what they all think, The government's supposed to take care of everybody and wipe your bottom for you. It's just, it's not
right,
so
right.
there. So there's definitely an educational arm to all of this, and that's one thing that we're pretty big on here at the NFPA is, let's go produce courses on the Constitution and what did our founders really give us. Now let's actually go out there and live by those principles, and fight for them, because, a right that you do not know and understand, you don't have, and that you won't fight for, I should say, right? If you will not stand up for and practice it. But anyways, that's a whole different topic. But
yeah.
On a positive note, the people that I'm meeting that are moving out here, they really have a deep-seated love of liberty and a live and let live attitude, and a respect for the life, liberty, and property of other people, and understanding that they should be able to do essentially what they want to, so long as they don't infringe upon the life, liberty, and ownership of property of another person. So it really is kind of, it seems like it's getting better here with the people coming in, which is a positive thing, even though it seems like as a whole things get more restricted all the time.
Yeah, no, and that's very hopeful, and I love to hear that, and it's true. In small enclaves, certainly that can be the case, and you can kind of look at North Idaho as an enclave in a way. But yeah, I mean, your rights cease to be a right as soon as they start infringing upon mine. I mean, that's not the definition. So I totally agree. And I certainly, that's basically my political philosophy. I mean, it is life, liberty, and property, and I don't infringe upon others in that manner. So, with that, I really do hope. But we even see here in rural Idaho, we're talking about huge levees and all this other stuff right now, and I don't want to get into that, but it's people are they're looking for it. But you're right. There's a lot of people that are saying no. We don't need that. The last thing we need is a rule saying that we can't do that, because you'll see that it's like there should be a rule against someone a kid riding in the back of a pickup truck in northern Idaho, and people are coming down on them and saying, no, we don't need. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it might be a good idea for someone to not ride in the back of a pickup truck, but the last thing I want is another regulation telling me I can't.
That's right. Yep.
You can ride in the back, just wear your helmet.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, it is actually legal in Idaho to ride in a pickup truck in the back.
You know, I thought it must be. It's funny. I was at the hardware store today and I saw a U.S. Forest Service truck. There must have been about 6 guys inside of it. They had a couple in the back, sitting in there in the bed. I thought, well, they're not going to violate the law, right? It's the Fed, so
Right.
it must be legit.
Yeah. No, we do it all the time, actually. Yeah. If we're going
Yeah.
short distances and the road is relatively untraveled and safe, then yeah, throw a couple
Yeah.
guys in the back and we're all set.
Absolutely.
So.
You know, I wanted to get back to some of the more specific technical details of people moving out to wherever it might be, the readout or their own chosen homestead in their own state. What are the critical, most important things that they first, I mean, we've talked about how they got to be, they have to have their goals set, they have to be prepared, they have to know what they're trying to do and how they're going to attain it, but what should they really be looking for on that property initially? Is there something that you can or cannot buy this property based on this one key element or multiple key elements?
Yeah, that's a great question. And man, I could talk about this for a long time because it's so important, but I'll give you the short answer. My first 3 always are water, access, structures. Okay, and what I mean by that is when I talk about water, it's like, okay, if you're going to go buy a piece of land, and first of all, whether it has structures on it, whether it's developed or not, is a huge factor, and it depends on the goals and objectives of the person, of the family, the skill sets. There's a lot involved there, so I won't blankly say they should buy raw land or they should buy land with structures on it. But these, as far as considerations, water is number 1. So, and that's when 2 things I mean by that. You obviously have your kind of macro climate, and you have your microclimate. So here in North Idaho, you could be vastly different from my property to a guy that's a mile down the road, and that's because he might be in a frost pocket, I'm not. I might have a really solid well plus an annual stream and maybe a seasonal stream and a spring on it, and he may have nothing except for a well. Okay. So water needs to be the first consideration. How much annual rainfall? Because it's different even here in northern Idaho from, say, Rathdrum to Sandpoint. The differences in annual rainfall hitting these mountain ranges changes things. So you have to understand that, and that would be my first consideration when I consult with people. I immediately look at those things. And if they are not thinking about those things, I advise them to think about those things. And then access. You have to look at your property. I don't care if it's got structures on it or not. And you have to think of all 4 seasons. In most cases, we're thinking about the middle of winter. Okay, in the most extreme winter, can I still have access to my property? What do I have to do to maintain access to my property? If I'm buying forested land, if I'm buying a lot of land, do I have access into the land? In other words, maybe there's some old skid trails and things like that from logging that I need to consider. Was the road going into your property built well, or because most people in rural property up here, they're on gravel roads. Okay, so we need to think about maintenance and all those kinds of things. Was it cut on the side? The side of a mountain, and there's every year in the spring there's it almost floods out, and et cetera, et cetera. So you have to consider all seasons and the worst case in all seasons as far as access is concerned. And then structures. For most people, especially those that are coming out of the city, I get this a lot. People want to come and they say, oh, hey, I'm going to buy 20 acres of raw land. And I'm like, okay, have you ever developed property before? Have you ever cut a road? Do you know what it costs to cut a road? Do you know what it costs to have a well dug up here? Do you know that you're in mountain water and you could have a 350-foot well, or you could have a 670-foot well? Are you prepared for those types of costs? Are you prepared to pull in power if you're going to go, grid tied? All those kinds of things are important to consider. And so for most people, I recommend let's look for a place that already has structures. Okay, so those are the top 3. There's many more aspects to buying land, many more. But just to give you kind of a quicker answer there.
Yeah, it amazes me, meeting people that are in town for a couple of days. They just fly out here and say, "Yeah, I've only got 2 days. We're going to find our place, head back
Yeah.
home, and then we're going to move." And I think, boy, I hope you have a really knowledgeable and trusting realtor or advisor, because, gosh, there's so much stuff to consider. It's everything you just mentioned really takes a lot of research, and you can't just go about it willy nilly.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's really important. And like I said, there's 20 other factors that we could talk about, but we I guess we won't today.
Yeah, water number one then, huh?
Yeah.
Can't live without water.
Yep. And for me, I want to see two proven sources. Excuse me, two proven sources of water. That's what I want to see.
Now, would community, what they call around here community water, which is essentially usually a gravity-fed communal system that you buy into, would that be considered adequate? Or when you say two sources of water, you mean something that's derived exclusively from property that you own?
I don't. I'm not a huge fan of the community water system. However, it is a proven source of water, and so I do consider it one. But in that case, what I would want to see is another very good source of water. Maybe it's a stream that goes through your property, or a spring-fed pond, or something like that. So yes, I do consider it a proven source of water, because it is. And there's ways to mitigate that. There's some, you're a little bit, you're reliant on this, probably a community cistern, probably, community power and generators and those kinds of things. But there's ways to mitigate community water. And not just things like, say, rainwater catchment, which I recommend. But there's ways to, you can have your own cistern, for example, and some other things like that. So yeah, it's a proven source of water. It's not my favorite, but it'll do.
Okay, any water's better than that.
So it's worth like a half, right?
Yeah. We'll give it 2/3.
Right, that sounds good. Awesome. Well, Sean, we're going to go ahead and let it go for today, but we appreciate your time as always and looking forward to having you on again in the future.
Sounds
great
good.
to speak with you again, Sean.
Okay, take care, gents.